everyone, and welcome to another episode of Traditionally Speaking. My name's Tom, and my friend Joe and I are going to be talking to you this month about a very different kind of Christmas tradition, and one that I think divides people because you either love it or you hate it, and that, of course, is eggnog.
Yeah, it's a pretty potent drink come Christmas time.
Well, do you know, it's interesting because it's one of those drinks, it hasn't really caught on over here, but then you look back and you realise actually it was hugely popular right up until about the mid-19th century in the UK, and it just seems to have disappeared.
Yeah, actually, you guys started it all in medieval Britain, and at the time it was mostly for the upper classes only. I mean, they had the wherewithal to get the ingredients, and also they used it for toast for health and wealth, and it was all through medieval Britain. And somehow it transferred over to the US here, but now you guys had a different drink, didn't you? Besides eggnog?
Well, it's interesting. I don't think it was necessarily called eggnog to start with, but I mean, it was huge in Britain, really in the 18th century particularly, because you would drink it from a traditional wooden cup, and the cup was called a noggin. And they reckon that's part of the reason why eggnog got its name. Um, Interestingly, as well, George Washington was one of the big adopters of it. He apparently was very fond of eggnog, and he
He
used
made a
to.
very potent one. Oh my goodness. He threw just about every kind of liquor you can imagine in there.
He certainly did. There was rum, there was sherry, there was whiskey.
Yep.
It must have been. I think it was one of those drinks you could probably use it to clean jewellery as well as a as well as just as a drink.
Maybe he used it to clean his wooden teeth.
Yeah.
Well, and of course, those drinks became like winter drinks and only winter drinks because at that time, going back from like medieval Britain on forward, people didn't have refrigeration, so they weren't able to keep it cold enough to keep it safe for very long. You either made it and drank it that night or pretty much threw the whole thing out. But that's why it became more of a holiday drink for eggnog, and of course its cousin Tom and Jerry, which I'll get into in a minute. And then the monks even had a kind of similar eggnog. They called it posset.
Mm.
And the difference was it was eggnog, but they added figs and more eggs to it. So, and that was used, obviously in Europe, and then came over to the Americas as well. So now the drink that you had, is that still popular there?
Well, probably the closest thing that Scotland comes to eggnog is a drink called whipcool. It's most regularly drunk in Shetland, which is an island in the far north of Scotland, and it was regularly invaded by Vikings over the century. So you tend to find that there's quite a bit of Viking cultural influence in Shetland. Now, whipcool, it kind of comes somewhere between posset and eggnog, and it's probably best known because it has a fair amount of rum in it, in many of the recipes, as well as that custard consistency. But you may also find that people in the Shetland area will add things like, raspberry preserve, for instance, just to give it a bit of extra taste. So you'll probably find there'll be about 3 egg yolks in a Shetland whipcool, probably about 30 grams of sugar, and I would say rum added to taste. So you can add as much as you want within reason.
That's the way most people make drinks around here, to taste, and then you taste it more in some and not so much in others. But yeah, well, and it's interesting, the eggnog, and actually we are gonna have, if you look at the site, we'll have the recipes for eggnog, and I'm gonna put the cousin of it, the Tom and Jerry, and something. I mean, as far as me personally goes, this is very special to me. I mean, my grandmother had a milk glass eggnog punch bowl and punch cups from the 1950s, and I grew up with that. In fact, I was always told, be very careful, don't let anything happen to it. And then my great aunt Madeline, who was my grandmother's sister, had a Tom and Jerry set that was the white milk glass with the noggins and the punch bowl. So there's a picture of that on the site as well. So take a look at that. But that's what's kept it as a tradition in my family for quite a few years now. But anyway, and I put my own recipe up for eggnog and of course the Tom and Jerry, which really the only difference between the two is the eggnog has 3/4 of a cup of brandy or to taste, and 3/4 of a cup of whiskey. And the Tom and Jerry, you use dark rum and cognac instead of the brandy and whiskey. Or you could be like George Washington, put it all in.
Well, it's something that they really are quite keen to take off here. I don't know if there's much sign of an uptake just yet. But in Scotland, we do have quite a lot of North American students. And as a result, there are quite a few shops springing up that sell a lot of American produce. Now, eggnog, particularly around about the festive season, is among them, where you can buy them in pre-packaged kits. And one of the things that fascinates me is that, speaking to American students and people who've come across to do different studies, they often like to season their eggnog with all kinds of different things. It can be cinnamon, it can be nutmeg, but the thing that really amazed me is you can get an eggnog flavored coffee now as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, in this country, it isn't quite as big as pumpkin spice, but come October, November, you start seeing the eggnog cartons popping up all over the place. And there's eggnog coffee creamer, and there's eggnog, obviously in the cartons, and eggnog cookies, and oh, good heaven, yeah, it comes around in a lot of different products that you can find in the US. And of course, if you really want to do a quick eggnog, you can just buy one of the cartons and add your own booze and you're ready to go. But the one that we put up is more the tradition with the heavy cream and the milk. And you mentioned nutmeg. Yeah, nutmeg's a big part of Tom and Jerry, and both uh, that and eggnog. Put a little nutmeg in there for flavoring, and yep, and of course sugar. So yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned that because nutmeg is traditionally something that would be added to whipped cool as well, along with Shetland cream. But what amazes me is just how many different variants there are across the whole of America. You get things like the Baltimore eggnog, the General Jackson eggnog, the Imperial eggnog, the Saratoga egg lemonade, all of these different varieties.
Well, it's just like most other things around here. Everybody has their own, particular take on how they like their eggnog. And from that, we've had lots of different recipes coming up. I mean, mine, I'm calling it traditional, but I could probably get an argument or two from our listeners going, no, the traditional one does this. So, it just depends where you've grown up and what part of the country and what you like in your eggnogs. But it's interesting that these drinks only appear in winter.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's one of those drinks, isn't it, that people like to associate with being warmed up at Christmas time. I mean, I think sort of for whipped cool, you'd be looking at sort of November through to about January, because traditionally it would be drunk around the New Year time rather than the traditional Christmas period. But I think with eggnog, now that it's becoming more widely available in sort of pre-packaged kits, you tend to find that it's a much broader period than that now. I would say probably starts about October.
Now, do you sell yours commercially at all on your side, or is it pretty much just homemade recipes?
I would say that if you wanted to get a hold of it here in Scotland, your best bet would be either to go to a specialist American food supplier, or to go to one of the or possibly one of the larger supermarkets, because they have different sections for food from different countries, and they would sell things like Hershey bars and other American food favourites that aren't widely available in the UK.
Wow. Okay, so it is available. You just have to search it out.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Wow, how fun. Now, and then there's other, holiday drinks like wassail, which you never hear of anymore. Even though there was a song about here we go, a wassailing and the leaves so green. But anyway, you don't see that as much, but eggnog's kind of stood the test of time and has always been a Christmas tradition in this country.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? It's amazing how culinary traditions can survive, develop, evolve into different things. A bit like the mince pie over here. I mean, if you asked somebody in the Tudor court for a mince pie, you would get something radically different from the kind of mince pies that you would buy off the shelf today. And I suppose eggnog's the same, isn't it? It's evolved over the generations.
Well, and don't you have the only store that does like fried mince pies in by you?
Well, I think that's probably a discussion for another episode, but that's perfectly true. Yes, the first fish and chip shop to deep fry a mince pie is in Camelon, which is just outside of Falkirk.
So hear that, folks? Here comes another podcast. We're going to be talking more about that down the road. So, anything else you'd like to add to the eggnog, Tom and Jerry, what is the drink that you call? Can you spell it?
It's WHIPKU with an umlaut and L.
And that's pronounced whip
Uh,
cool?
Whip cool. Yeah.
Huh. Never heard of it in this country. That's only me, but I've never seen it in print or never heard about it. And when I'm looking for holiday drinks or punches, I haven't seen it pop up. So that's interesting.
Well, to be absolutely honest with you, I would say about 95% of people in Scotland haven't heard of it either. It's pretty obscure as Christmas drinks go.
Okay, so yeah, again, didn't quite last the test of time that eggnog did. So, but if you're a traditionalist, now Tom, you going to put that recipe up as well?
I hope so. Yeah, there's lots of different ways of preparing it, and interestingly, I mean, I have a number of good friends from Shetland, and none of them had heard of Whipcool. So I'm asking around to see what the best recipe is, and hopefully that'll be added to the website soon.
And of course, as Tom mentioned, you can look at these recipes and then add your own ingredients. Or if you go, this needs a touch of this or a touch of that, feel free. So, and if you guys have any kind of unusual drinks that you drink at the holidays that we haven't mentioned, I'd love to hear it. I'm always looking for new cocktails and punches and stuff to serve at the holidays. So, by all means, let us know on our website what your favorite holiday drink is.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not get in contact and let us know if you perhaps enjoy different eggnog traditions? Like, for instance, there are a number of egg custard puddings which are inspired by eggnog. Perhaps you prefer that to the actual custard drink. Who knows? I'm sure you all have different traditions where you come from. So if you would like to tell us about them, please visit us on the website and tell us more about it.
Absolutely. Oh, Christmas desserts. Yeah, we got to do a podcast on that. Oh,
Absolutely.
that would be a long one. Well, any final words on eggnogs or whip cools or Tom and Jerry's?
Well, just to say, I hope wherever you are that you enjoy your milk punch or your egg milk punch or your eggnog or whatever you want to call it. That I dare say you have your own traditions and that you take it to heart every Christmas time. If that brings you some comfort in the cold and wet nights, or the snowy nights, then I really hope that you'll tell us all about it.
And of course, just please be responsible when you're adding all these liquors into your drinks. So be careful. Don't be going out after you've had a punch bowl full. Well, Tom, this has been another fun thing. And, again, I'm glad you let me share my little story about, Eggnog and Tom and Jerry here, because it really does mean an awful lot to my wife, Mary, and I every season. So, and I hope you all enjoyed this, and we'll be listening for our next podcast.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's been great to talk to you, and I hope that you'll tune in again soon.